We can start. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala we normally have our lesson. We discuss the book Al-Mukhtasar Sahih Bukhari by Zabid rahimahullah. But today inshallah ta'ala that will change from that lesson and we'll discuss a different topic. And the topic inshallah ta'ala that we have chosen to discuss, seeing that we have entered the month of Rajab, which is the 7th month of Islamic calendar year, that you'll find that there's different things that is attributed to the month of Rajab regarding things to be done, things not to be done in this month of Rajab. So we'll try to look and to see as to what have been mentioned and put forward by the ulama in discussing this particular matter regarding what are the things that are allowed in the month of Rajab or not allowed in the month of Rajab. So to take into account and to be mindful that you find the ulama of the past and also of those of contemporary that they have tried to compile or put together books that discuss concerning each month and the various virtue of those months, also the various acts that may be encouraged in those months. So this is something that has been discussed by the ulama of past, as we said, and also those of contemporary time. The book, or of those that we'll be working with in trying to just to discuss this matter in brief, that there's a book that is by Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, so Imam Al-Hafiz Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali rahimahullah, where he wrote a book called Lataif Ma'azif, Lataif Ma'azif, where he discussed concerning each month and what are the virtues and the ahkam that relates to things, practice of that month. So we'll be discussing in particular the month of Rajab in this particular book, and also we'll go to a second book that covers also matter that relates to Rajab. And this book, it is a book that is written by Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, one of the ulama of hadith, where he wrote a book called Tabyin al-Ajab bima warad fi shahr al-Rajab. So regarding tabyin, clarity of those things that seem to be amazed, regarding or those things that have been amazing things that relates to the month of Rajab. So we're using those two as primary source and also just what have been mentioned regarding this particular month. So before we kind of somewhat go into this discussion regarding concerning the month of Rajab, as we mentioned that this discussion is something that needs to be had and to be, we are clear and regarding what are the things that are allowed and not allowed. Seeing that the month of Rajab, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, it occurs on a yearly basis. So, and each month have certain virtues that are attached to them, and sometimes things are attributed to a month that is not, there's no evidence for this, there's nothing to support those things. So regarding concerning of those things to take into account that and this is a mukhtasar. So we have, there's the original book of Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, but this is a mukhtasar from a summary of what he wrote on this topic. So he mentioned wadifat shahr Rajab. So what are the duties, the things of the month of this Rajab? As we said, Rajab is the 7th month. After Rajab, we have Shaban, and then we have Ramadan. There's a hadith regarding concerning to set the stage regarding this particular discussion, where he mentioned that akhrajahu fi sahihaini, that is hadith that is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, min hadith Abi Bakr radiyallahu anhu قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام خطب في حجة الوداع. So the Prophet عليه السلام, when he made his khutbah in Hajjat al-Wada, of the thing that he mentioned, that he stated concerning of the matters mentioned, as-sana ithna ashar shahra, as-sana ithna ashar shahran, that the year it consists of 12 months. Minha arba hurum, 4 of those 12 months, 4 of which that they are said to be the months of hurum. Then I mentioned thalatha or thalathatun mutawaliyat, that there are 3 of them that are one after the other. Dhul Qiyada, Dhul Hijjah, wal Muharram. So those 3 months that they're in the same, they follow one behind the other. Then I mention wal Rajab, mother, and the month. Then you have month of Rajab, al mother, الذي بين جمادى وشعبان. So I mentioned that the month of Rajab is the month that is it comes after, it's in between the month of Jumada and also Shaban. And as we mentioned, the hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim. So of the things that this hadith, it states that regarding as-sana, and the hadith in somewhat inna az-zaman qad istadar كهيته يوم خلق الله السماوات والأرض. Then he mentioned as-sana 12 shahran, that the year it consists, meaning the Islamic year, it consists of 12 months, and amongst those 12 months, 4 of which are said to be the months of Muharram, or the month of Hurum, where certain things are not allowed, and we'll kind of somewhat briefly discuss those things. Then also you find, so that kind of from this it shows that the month of Rajab, it fall in of virtue by way of being one of the that's referred to as the sacred months. So a Rajab, by way of virtue is by way of it being one of the sacred months, of the 4 sacred months, those months that is to be honored and to be respected, and also certain ahkam that applies particularly to some of those months. Then I mentioned that 3 of those months that they follow one behind the other, and then he mentioned those 3, Dhul Qiyada, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram. That Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, we just kind of jump what he mentions. He mentioned that regarding concerning that these 4 months that are mentioned, that Dhul Qiyada is the month before Dhul Hijjah. So people start to somewhat people start to travel and prepare themselves regarding to meet the days of Hajj. So regarding concerning that for the person who's in the state of Hajj, of the time that also he can is Hajj, that of those months that they have given, Dhul Qiyada, most will start their journey, especially in the days before, where people had to travel from far distance, that they would travel from the month of Dhul Qiyada as a part of their Ramadan preparation, or sorry, their Hajj preparation. Dhul Hijjah is the month of Hajj, so it comes with its own virtue. So people start to travel to Hajj from Dhul Qiyada. They arrive regarding Al-Hajj in Dhul Hijjah and perform the Hajj in the month of Dhul Hijjah. Then in Muharram, they start to return. Then people start to return, or those who remain behind and then return after. Then Rajab is within those months, regarding it being the months of Ashhur al-Hurum. They mention regarding also in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, عند عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that the amount of months with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is 12 months في كتاب الله, in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned regarding the mention يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها أربعة حرم, that it mentioned of these months that 4 of them are said to be, we use the word sacred. 4 are said to be sacred of those 12 months that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mentioned. So by this, as we stated before on the hadith, that amongst those 4 months is Rajab. Rajab is amongst those 4 months. So they mentioned regarding concern this matter, that Rajab at times, they mentioned that the different names that Rajab, why it is referred to as Rajab. You have many things that are said that it is said referred to as Rajab based upon that Rajab is said to be of those days that the people used to honor. So regarding that the people in Jahiliyyah, that they would honor the month of Rajab, and Islam also kind of somewhat coincide with this. So Islam coincide with a practice in Jahiliyyah before Islam, that the people used to honor certain months where certain things will not be done, or those months are looked upon different compared to other months. So Islam came, and also somewhat, and Islam also coincide with those practice. So they mentioned that Rajab in particular, in our discussion, that it is said to be referred to as Adamat Hurmatiha, that the people used to honor that month, show respect to that month, and also avoiding dhunub, sin in that month. So regarding the month of Rajab, in particular, we discussed in particular that in Jahiliyyah, they used to honor this month, respect this month, to the extent that they would avoid sin in this month. Also, they've heard that Rajab is as such, it will be respected, as I mentioned, Summiyat, the days concerned Al-Hurum, by way of Hurm Tahrim Al-Kital Fiha, where also that they would not per se involved in any form of fighting, wars in those months. So no fight of battles, wars in those months. That I mentioned as a practice in Jahiliyyah that was somewhat well known. So in these months, the Arabs before Islam, they used to somewhat respect these months. Also, a part of the respect of these months, that they mentioned that the respect also amongst the Arabs, that these 4 months, including Rajab, was of those months that they kind of somewhat give allowance, made it somewhat easy, give access to the people regarding performing of Hajj and Umrah, as they used to see as the month of the days of the months of Hajj would be the 3 we mentioned, starting from Dhul Qiydah, Dhul Hijjah, and also Muharram. And as for Rajab, that you see it as the month that they were kind of somewhat that they will give access for people to perform Al-Umrah. So Rajab, giving people access that they could perform Al-Umrah. So they'll see it as those days, those months that they have these significance. So those are the things that I mentioned regarding of these months, regarding that there's 4 months that are said to be Ashhur al-Hurum, amongst them the month of Rajab. Then I mentioned regarding concerning that with Rajab, of the ahkam that he mentioned of those things, that before Jahiliyyah existed regarding concerning was the hukum regarding the ulama regarding that al-Qital, the hukum regarding fighting in the months of these months of Hurum. So these sacred months, these 4 months, including Rajab, is it allowed, as in Jahiliyyah, they would avoid battles, fighting in these months. When Islam came, it still honored those 4 months, but regarding fighting, what was the ruling pertaining to this? What was the ruling pertaining to this? It is something that still Islam did not allow regarding fighting in the month of these sacred months, or it became something that was somewhat, they said that it was somewhat abrogated and became allowed. So you find that on this matter, that Jumhur of the ulama, majority of the ulama, ala annahu nusikh, tahrimu, that regarding fighting, battles in these months, these sacred months, that it existed before, but then Islam came, it abrogated that ruling, where it gave allowance. So before you were not allowed to fight in those months. When Islam came, then it was, this matter was somewhat removed, where fighting became allowed, that fighting became allowed. And I mentioned regarding concern that Nas'ala Naskhihi, Imam Ahmed, that I find of the ulama, of the Jumhur amongst them, as Ibn Rajab rahimahullah min Hanabila, he mentioned that that's the view that taken by Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, that it is permissible regarding fighting the month of these sacred months, including Muharram, including Rajab. Then he mentioned also that is a second position of the ulama, that ذهب طائفة من العلماء من السلف منهم عطاء, that is a group amongst the Salaf from the ulama who take the position regarding concerning إلى بقاء تحريمي, that it remains that one is not allowed to fight in the month of those sacred months, those 4 sacred months, that one is not allowed to fight. As I mentioned that, they mentioned that amongst those who took this position, Ata of the ulama of the Salaf, and others that have aligned to that view. So overall, they find that, and they mentioned that those who say it is something which is not that it still remain, that it is haram to have battles in the month of these sacred months, that they mentioned that they said Surah Al-Ma'idah was of those surah that came later. So Surah Al-Ma'idah, of the latter surah to be revealed. So based upon that, they say it still remain where it honored these months. So regarding concerning that Surah Al-Ma'idah, that honored, mentioned this, so they alter that view. The second view all concerned that they mention that it is allowed to fight in these months. That's the call of Jumhur of the ulama and of the Salaf, of the Sahaba. They mentioned the Prophet of Islam that and the Sahaba that they had battles that took place in the month of, in these months. So you find that battles did take place in these months, these sacred months. So you find that battles took place in the month of Ramadan and other of these sacred months. So it shows that that ruling was somewhat abrogated. So what was the practice before? that it was not allowed to fight in these months, but that was abrogated where allowance was given, where you find that certain battles that took place have been difficult for the Muslim, that the Muslim did not stop and the battles and then resume after, but instead they continue their fighting even throughout the months, these sacred months. So that's concerned aqwal of the ulama regarding this matter. That was a practice in Jahiliyyah regarding these sacred months. Is fighting allowed or not allowed after Islam? As we mentioned, there's a khilaf between the ulama. Majority is of the view that it is allowed, and even though of the ulama who take the position, it is not allowed. They mention also of the benefit regarding, in the hadith, the Prophet mentioned a Rajab mother, that a Rajab mother, that al-mother, that they mentioned that this particular tribe, that Rajab is somewhat attached to them based upon that they especially compared to other of the tribes amongst the Arabs, that they used to give the month of Rajab a lot of respect. So they used to give a lot of respect to the month of Rajab. So Rajab is somewhat attached to them. It is attached to them. Then Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he mentioned regarding concerning some of the ahkam that pertains to these months, or in particular al-Rajab. Bear in mind that when we come to the ahkam regarding anything, that we see that ahkam of Islam is matter that regarding halal and haram, that is something a person have to look into these matters carefully, and not per se be one who just follow others without knowing the evidence and also knowing the source of what we're doing. So you might find someone doing something, or a group of people doing something, and they may do it repeatedly and consistently, but that's not per se a sign or indicator that that thing is correct or incorrect. So for one to distinguish knowing something is correct or incorrect, then a person is required to have dalil, especially in matters regarding ibadat. So regarding Rajab or these months, in any month of the year or any particular day that a person gives certain type of significance, then as an Islamic regarding doing certain acts of ibadah, then a person is required to have some type of dalil. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, in his book, in his Sahih, Al-Bukhari in his Sahih, his Jami' al-Sahih, that of the chapters that he gave a certain title, that he called the title Babun, the chapter Al-Ilm Qabla Al-Qawl Wal-Amal. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, like setting the stage regarding how to approach matters regarding ad-deen. So he titled one of his chapters by putting the heading Al-Ilm Qabla Al-Qawl Wal-Amal, that knowledge precedes speech and action. So it showed that the Muslim regarding before carrying out an act, or a person saying of certain things and attributing this to Islam, or seeing an act of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an act of ibadah, qurba, then a person have to ensure that that action is something that Islam legislates. So taking this into account in approaching matters regarding these months, and this month in particular Rajab, that anything that is done also, we use the same type of approach, which is whatever is done or said or attributed to Islam regarding something particular to the month of Rajab, then one should seek of ilm. By way of al-ilm, by way of dalil from the Quran, or by way of the sunnah as-sahiha. Aisha radhiyallahu anha, that also regarding acts of ibadah, for them to be accepted, then they have to comply with two conditions. So the ulama have mentioned regarding, for an act to be deemed to be acceptable, that they have to fulfill two conditions, al-ikhlas, and also muwafaqat lis-sunnah. So the two conditions for an act to be acceptable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be considered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these two things must be present. That the person carrying out that act, it is done with ikhlas regarding his intention, the reason of him doing this act, that is being done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is al-ikhlas. That is doing that act for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for no other reason. And the second of those conditions is al-muwafaqat li-sunnah, muwafaq as-sunnah, that a person tries to ensure that the act that is being done is in line with the sunnah. And for something to be in line with the sunnah, it must be it must have an evidence from the Quran or from the sunnah. So for an act to be said muwafiq li-sunnah, it must have a precedent, an evidence from the Quran or from the Sunnah. So Aisha anha, or Mu'mineen, she said also regarding this matter, as she said in the hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. من أحدث, that the one who innovates في أمرنا هذا, regarding this affairs of ours regarding Islam, ما ليس منه, that which is not from it, not from Islam, it has no precedent in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ did not carry out this act, nor approve of it. فهو رد, then it is rejected. What hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim. Another narration in the Muslim of that hadith, Aisha anha, she said, Man amila. So the first hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim regarding anyone or any group or any person that have innovate, bring about something, attribute this act to Islam, seeking to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there's no evidence, there's no precedent from it, from the Quran, the Sunnah, then it is rejected. The second hadith of this meaning, where it mentioned, Man amila amalan, that the one who does an act, Man amila amalan, laysa alayhi amruna, that is not according to what we, the Prophet ﷺ, have came with, fahuwa rad, then it is something which is rejected. So if an act that is being carried out, and it has no precedent, but there's no mention that the Prophet ﷺ, there's nothing that has been stated in an authentic, acceptable way, going back to the Prophet ﷺ, then it is rejected. So they show that the Muslim have to be mindful regarding things that we do. I would say now that especially in these times where there are many things that are attributed to Islam, but it has no precedent. So of these things in this month of Rajab that started last week, we'll find that many things is attributed, or people are encouraged to participate in things that is said to be related to the month of Rajab. Doing so, there's a lot of virtue and reward that come with this. So the thing is, as I said, but these things need to be critiqued, need to be verified and checked, but we have seen the sources regarding what is said, regarding what is allowed and what is not allowed. And the asl, as the ulama have mentioned concerning the asl, regarding acts of ibadat, so regarding a person carrying out an act of ibadah, then the asl, the root of this, the principal ruling is that al-acts of ibadah tawqifiyya. So acts of ibadat, they are said acts of worship, that they are said to be acts that are tawqifiyya, meaning tawqifiyya, that a person must have a text for this. The text, al-Quran wa Sunnah. So the text is the Quran and the Sunnah before a person can embark or carry out an act regarded as an act of ibadah. Then a person must have a text. So the person does not do anything until he is given permission by way of Allah in his book or by way of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So these are the things to be looked into. So the ulama have discussed this matter. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, of the thing that he discussed regarding Rajab, that he have mentioned that there are certain ahkam or things that are mentioned attributed to Rajab. Of those things we have ad-dabah, slaughtering in the month of Rajab. We have as-salat, certain type of salat to be done in the month of Rajab. Siyam, fasting in particular of the month of Rajab, and the likes. So he discussed some of these masail, or some of these things, and also other ulama have covered some of these masail. So they mentioned regarding concerning that of those things regarding Rajab that he discussed, that he mentioned of these things regarding that he states, فَأَكْثَرُونَ, they mentioned concerning al-dhabiha, which is al-dhab, slaughtering in particular, the act of worship in the month of Rajab. So a person to carry out slaughtering in the month of Rajab as a form of qurba, an act of worship. He mentioned فَأَكْثَرُونَ عَلَى أَنَّ الْإِسْلَامِ أَبْتَلَهَا, that Ibn Rajab rahimah mentioned that as for Islam, that as the position taken by many of the ulama, that regarding performing a particular slaughter, sacrifice of an animal in the month of Rajab, Islam have come to erase this. Then I mentioned the hadith في صحيحين يعني بخاري مسلم من حديث أبي هريرة رضي عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا فرع ولا عتيرة, لا فرع ولا عتيرة. So this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding لا فرع. So farra, the ulama mentioned regarding concerning that this was the practice where that the firstborn, that the person will offer this as a sacrifice to their idols. So the first born, so the person of something, the first, then this will be offered. Then it will be offered as a type of sacrifice. So giving sacrifice based upon having your firstborn, or and then I mentioned also. So this was something that this type of sacrifice was done for their tawagit, for their idols. So Islam came to remove that. The Prophet said, La fara', that there's no such practice to be continued, as this was the practice of the people of Jahiliyyah. Then also mentioned wala atira. So atira that they mentioned regarding concerning that, also a form of sacrifice that would be done in particular in the month of Rajab. So the sacrifice that is offered in the month of Rajab. And again, so with Islam that goes regarding concerning that act of ibadah, one should not be done for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also it should have a basis from Allah, it should have a evidence for doing so from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's of those things that Islam came to remove regarding these type of sacrifice of animals based upon these reasons. And after concerning wala atira, that relates to in specific to the month of Rajab. So Islam erased this. Islam removed this practice and discontinued this practice as it goes against Islam. Then other matters that are discussed regarding concerning that even I mentioned, so any form of not festivity, اتخاذه like mawsim or ihtifalat regarding akla halawat, people having these type of gatherings where things of sweet or food is given in the form of Eid, then Islam, then that is also something not allowed, also something which is not allowed. Then of those things that are discussed, as I mentioned, that slaughtering, we cover that in brief. Of those things that are done in the month of Rajab, that we have, they mentioned different acts. Amongst them, they mention siyam that are done in the month of Rajab. So I mentioned that we have the Muqtasar, but you have this book I will mention by by man who said Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, so he has a separate a book that discuss gathering mainly a hadith relating to the virtue or certain acts of Rajab. Amongst and you have others who have done similar work. So he mentioned to critique some of those hadiths that regarding that mention some of these things of acts. We just try to mention some of those hadiths that they would mention regarding the month of Rajab. So he mentioned regarding concerning that the reason that he wrote this book, he mentioned فَقَدْ تَقَرَّأُ السُّؤَالَ جَمَاعَ مِنْ الْإِخْوَانِ, that this question is one which is repeatedly being asked by a group amongst his brother في جم مورد في فضائل شهر الرجب, regarding gathering the hadith that have been mentioned regarding the month of Rajab. So he did this. Then he started the book by stating لم يرد في فضل شهر رجب, that there's nothing that have been narrated regarding the virtue of the month of Rajab, ولا في صيام, nor anything regarding the virtue of fasting that month, ولا في صيام شيء, or anything regarding fasting anything of that month, معين, in specific, ولا في قيام ليلة مخصوصة فيها or فيه, nor a person standing in prayer or performing salat at specific nights in this particular month. Hadith sahihun yusla lil-hujja, that there's no hadith that is authentic that is suitable as a proof. Nam, that I mentioned فَقَدْ سَبَقَنِي إِلَى جَزْمٍ بِذَلِكَ, and I mentioned as for others who have preceded me in making this very clear, he mentioned وَمِنْ ذَلِكَ, he mentioned Imam Abu Ismail al-Harari al-Hafiz, then he mentioned one of the ulama who have preceded him regarding what he have just said. So this is a matter that has been discussed by some of the ulama regarding what have been transmitted or what is there regarding things to be done in the month of Rajab. So from that, it shows that in general, that can somewhat set the mind regarding that most of the matters pertaining to Rajab dive, that most of the hadith regarding Rajab are very weak, or mawdu, which is very weak, and mawdu are said to be of those hadith that they cannot be used as an evidence. they cannot be used to support anything. Rather, when especially hadith al-mawdu', for a person to narrate those hadith, or to that those hadith cannot be used regarding anything regarding Islam. And if they are mentioned, they should be clarified. So a person use a hadith which is mawdu', fabricated, then a person have to clarify to the audience that this hadith is mawdu'. Nam, as a general rule of that the ulama said regarding narrating hadith which is mawdu', and also similar regarding hadith which is da'if jiddan. He mentioned of the hadith, he mentioned regarding of those hadith regarding the virtue of the month of Rajab, he mentioned of those hadith, he mentioned inna fil jannah nahran yuqal lahu Rajab, that in a Jannah there is a nahar, there is a river, yuqal lahu Rajab, that is called Aish Rajab. Nam ma'uhu ashad bayad min al-laban, that he can give a description that that its water is more brighter than that of laban, of milk, wa ahla min asal, also tastes better than that of asal. Then it mentioned man sama yawman, so that's regarding the virtue of what? Rajab. And also given a description regarding concerning that there's a nahar, that actual river in Jannah that is referred to as a Rajab. Then it mentioned man sama yawman min Rajab, that the one who fasts a day of Rajab, saqah Allah min dhalika nahar, that the one who fasts a day of Rajab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will feed him, he would drink, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow him to drink from this river. They mentioned concerning that that particular hadith that they have mentioned regarding concerning that of those hadith that is mawdu', those hadith that are said to be al-mawdu'. So Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah have mentioned aywa.
But even his muqaddimah, he mentions that there's no hadith. Why did he write a book then?
And so that now that sometimes that even the Prophet is that time. Sometimes I give you I said that clarify the ruling before, then gonna go into specific after. So in some cases that the Prophet that or in other cases that the person give it up the final outcome, then go into the details after. So give it a final outcome, then go into the details, so the person can somewhat get the main gist as you start. So the person as discussing these hadith is what he discussed after regarding mentioning this hadith is more for a person who's inclined towards ilm al-hadith. For a common person read it, then it would not make sense, because it's more hadithiyah type of discussion that he'll mention. قلت قال في كامل لابن عدي. They start to go through things that are more for a person who's of a person of ilm al-hadith. So by this you can somewhat wish now to discuss those hadith, but the discussion is more of a person who's hadithiyah inclined or have that background behind, but also for the person of an idea as to why this is, how he has come to that conclusion. So you can somewhat mention, you have several hadith that regarding that matter. So from that it shows regarding that even the hadith I mentioned, Allahumma, that sometimes we mentioned before Ramadan, that the Prophet ﷺ said regarding إِذَا دَخَلَ رَجَبْ قال, that when the month of Rajab enters, so we are in that month. So you have certain masajid, famous masajid, when Rajab's the first day of Rajab or it start, that they have like a hafla, they have like a gathering in the masjid, and they start to do qasida, read Quran and other things, to praise as a form of that to mark the start of the month of Rajab. And after the they will mention the hadith, they will read the hadith aloud. They mention Allahumma barak lana fi Rajab. So the hadith the Prophet mentioned Allahumma barak lana fi Rajab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses in the month of Rajab, wa Shaban, and the month of Siyaf Rajab, Shaban that comes after, wa balighna Ramadan, and make us to meet Ramadan. So you find that hadith is mentioned by many. He mentioned regarding رواه تبران في الأوسط من حديث زائدة قال لا يروي أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا بهذا حديث تفرد به الزائدة. So a discussion regarding the only person that narrate that hadith, in the hadith you have one person called Zaida. There's only one, a single person that have narrate this hadith upon the Prophet Islam, and there's some discussion regarding that narration. So the hadith generally that he mentioned that of the ulama who hold that hadith to be daif, of the ulama who hold that hadith to be ad-daif. So he mentioned regarding concerning an-Nasa'i that mentioned regarding la adru man huwa, Then it mentioned في الضعفاء منكر الحديث. Then it mentioned في الكنى ليس بثقة. قال ابن حبان لا يحتج بخبره. So you have that discussion regarding. So I said that's more for clarity by way of why he has come to such conclusion. We said that the hadith is somewhat mentioned by many. Nam, sa. So the hadith, so it's not the hadith that some discussion regarding. So they said the least that of the ulama who all this hadith to be daif. Nam, but that hadith is used. It can somewhat, if anything, just mention just the general virtue of. We said if it's authentic for those, just mention the general virtue of Rajab, but Shaban and Ramadan, but didn't mention specific act to be done. Also, he mentioned hadith that he mentioned. After hadith, he mentioned that hadith an Abu Hurairah قال Rasulullah لم يصم بعد رمضان إلا رجب وشعبان. The Prophet of Islam did not fast like most of the days for after Ramadan except for Rajab wa Shaban. That's a famous hadith. أي قال ذا قلت وهو حديث منكر. So the hadith is منكر. نعم. من أجل يوسف بن عطية فإنه ضعيف جدا. نعم. So it's not that concerning that the reason that of the narrators in hadith and the hadith in the Aljamaykee that mention لم يصم بعد رمضان. You have some mention about Shaban, but this one have Rajab was Shaban. So the one that is more maybe known is the one without mentioning Rajab, but just mentioning Shaban. Then I mentioned the hadith. We just mentioned some of the hadith that are. I mentioned hadith. Al-Rajab, Shahrullah. Al-Rajab, Shahrullah. Wa Shaban, Shahri. There's the Prophet ﷺ saying this thing. It says, Rajab, Shahrullah. Rajab is the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa Shaban, Shahri. And Shaban is the Prophet ﷺ month. Then I mentioned, Wa Ramadan, Shahr ummati. That Ramadan is the month of my ummah. Nam. As for that hadith, that also, that hadith, they said a hadith, daif, mawdu. So it shows regarding concern that not most of the hadith that have been mentioned, that can somewhat, they said, fast track, that of the more, in moving some hadith that I mentioned, that of those hadith that I discussed, where he mentioned regarding as-salat fi Ramadan, as-salat al-siyam, as we mentioned, is nothing authentic. He mentioned regarding concerning as-siyam, man sama fi Rajab. Well, hadith it mentioned, man sama min Rajab, the one who fasts from Rajab, yawman, one day, kana kasana, as if he has fasted the entire year. Nam, that hadith that he mentioned, that Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah mentioned in his book Mawdu'at. So Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah have a book called Mawdu'at. Nam, and a few books that he discussed hadith that are very weak. That hadith that he mentioned, that is from that book, indicating that hadith is mawdu', fabricated. Nam, another hadith that is mentioned, that they have a particular, you have other hadith he mentioned regarding Sawm and others. They mention this hadith, man sama yawman min Rajab, the one who fasts a day of Rajab. Wa salla, so that's regarding fasting. وصلى فيه أربع ركعات, and he prays أربع ركعات. يقرأ في أول ركعة 100 مرة آية الكرسي. So this is a hadith that mention praising certain things of the month of Rajab. One, siyam. Second, praying a salat in a particular way. So I mentioned that how much rakah? 4 rakah. يقرأ في أول ركعة 100 مرة آية الكرسي. So in the first rakah, to read Ayatul Kursi 100 times. MashaAllah. وفي ركعة الثانية قل هو لو أحد 100 مرة. Now, to keep that count, MashaAllah. They mention لم يمت, that a person will not die حتى يرى مقعده من الجنة, except the person who dies, he will see is seat in Jannah. Again, that hadith is mawdu'. Nam, hadith mawdu'. So you find a certain hadith, and another more famous that is more, the one that is more for this, that is more mentioned, we just mentioned, as-salat, they call as-salat al-raghaib. Salat al-raghaib. that is done in Ramadan. So that's not Ramadan, that is done in Rajab. So Salat al-Raghaib, it is done on the 27th, 9th of Rajab. With me? So the 27th of Rajab, then they are supposed to stand for this salah. So the hadith it mentioned regarding concerning that it mentioned ما من أحد يصوم يوم خميس ويوم أول خميس من رجب. So with that salat Raghaib, that the first Khamis, which would be the first what? Thursday of the month. For example, we just started Rajab. So today is the 7th of Rajab, or let's say the 8th. So yet Thursday was the first Thursday of this month, and this Jummah is the first. So the person expected to fast yesterday, which was Thursday. So the person will fast the day before. Then it mentioned ثم يصلي في ما بين العشاء, or some mention the Khata mentioned بين المغرب والعشاء. So between Maghrib and Isha, the person will establish a salat between Maghrib and Isha. Yani Laylatul Jummah, mean the night, meaning last night, will be we call it Thursday night. So between, after Maghrib, before Jummah, in between, is supposed to pray the Salat al-Raghaib. Then I mentioned Ithnata Rasha, it is 12 Raka. Then I mentioned Yaqra fi awwal fi kulli Raka fi each Raka بفاتحة كتاب فاتر مرة وإنا أنزلنا في ليلة القدر 3 مرات. Then after then إنا أنزلنا في ليلة القدر 3 مرات وكل أحد 12 مرة. Then it mentioned يفصل بين كل ركعتين بتسليم. So each ركعتين فإذا فرغ من صلاته صلى 70 مرة. Then يفصل بين كل ركعتين فإذا فرغ من صلاته يصلي 70 مرة. يقول, then the person will say after the end of his salat اللهم صل على محمد نبي الأمة وعلى آله ثم 70 مرة. Then the person will say ثم يسجد, then he would prostrate ويقول في سجوده سبح قدوس رب الملائكة والروح 70 مرة. ثم يرفع رأسه, then he comes up ويقول أغفر وارحم وتجاوز أما تعلم إنك أنت العزيز العظيم 70 مرة, 70 times. ثم يسجد الثاني, then he goes back down again for another time, and he's going to somewhat go through the same routine. So that's concerning that Salat Raghaib. So that would be last night, because today is when Salat will be Thursday night, the Friday night for us. So that will be the routine to be done. So I said, no, those things that aywa. So they mentioned qala musarraf, meaning Ibn Jawzi, that mentioned concerning that these narration that they are mawdu, I mentioned him in his book Al-Mawdu'at. Then also regarding the virtue, the hadith of Ali ibn Talib, regarding the Prophet ﷺ قال aywa. So that means regarding concerning Salat al-Raghaib, you have books specific about that, discuss about that act, but that give an idea regarding what is involved. But some people do it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam Rasulullah wa bad. So as we mentioned that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah in this book can somewhat clarify these ahadith that are used to justify certain things that are done in the month of Rajab. So as he started that can somewhat give us the general summary that all the ahadith that relate to this matter is said to be daif or mawdu or al-mawdu. Also you have other hadiths, so also another practice that they do concerning that, and the hadith mentioned that the hadith of Anas bin Malik قال رسول الله عليه السلام من صلى ليلة النصف من رجب أربع عشر ركعة. So you have also a next salat that is done, which is done in, they said, the middle of the month, which would be around the 14th, 15th. Nam, that also in the same type of tarkib or system regarding that a person after reading each rakah such and such and such, also that is done in the middle of the month. Also, and he mentioned that hadith is also is mawdu regarding any particular rakah or amount of rakat to be done in the middle of the month of Rajab. Also those hadith are said to be mawdu. Those hadith are said to be mawdu. Going back. Hey, so overall that the matters regarding concerning the hadith, that all the hadith regarding that this matter is said to be da'if. Then also the hadith that he mentioned regarding concerning Abi Dhar قال رسول الله عليه السلام من صام يوما من رجب أدل صيام شهر أدل صيام شهر, that the one who fasts a day of Rajab nam, then it will be similar to that of fast in the month. So the ulama does that, and then they mention ومن صام منها سبع أيام غلقت عنه أبواب الجحيم السبعة, that the person who fasts for 7 days, then the doors of Jahim, of An-Nar, will be closed upon. The 7 doors of the Nar will be closed upon him. Then it mentioned different things. So said again, also those hadith are said to be mawdu. All those hadith that are somewhat mentioned or kind of somewhat that encourage regarding fasting days or particular days, amount of days, amount of Rajab, all those hadith are said to be da'if. So the ulama mentioned regarding concerning this matter that a person regarding Rajab would be taken as any ordinary month, and that doesn't take anything away from the month of Rajab. But the person, if regarding fasting or these practice, he would do what he will normally do. So the person normally fasts, that you just fast is normal fast, the days that are allowed. So either the days regarding Monday, Thursday, 3 days of the month, then a person, those fasting, they still are done even the month of Rajab. So the person does do what he will normally carry on and what he will normally do in the month of Rajab. So also they mention regarding concerning things that relates to a Rajab, that they all concerning that they have what is referred to as Laylatu Isra wal Mi'raj. Laylatu Isra wal Mi'raj. Nam, so later Isra wal Mi'raj concerned the Prophet's ascension or going to Bayt al-Aqsa and then going up above the 7 heavens, that they all that they take the view, those who believe that the Isra wal Mi'raj it took place in Rajab, and more so the 27th night of Rajab. Nam, so on that day they will gather. So you usually have like a gathering on that day, and different things are done. So you usually have a gathering. So it'll be like a day of Eid for them. That day will be a day of gathering, a day of Eid, of merriment regarding that day, and things are encouraged to be done on that day. So because they see that day as the day of Isra wa Mi'raj. So regarding concerning that idea, that concept, said, so they mentioned that the ulama of Sirah, that they have mentioned, those who have written regarding concerning the Prophet of Islam life, that I've discussed regarding concerning that tahdid, tariq, can put a specific date or regarding regarding al-Isra wa Mi'raj, that they all agree, as mentioned by some of the ulama, that a hadith, Ibn Qayyim mentioned a hadith regarding Isra mutawatir, regarding the Prophet that he did go up. So there's no shak about that. So the Prophet started making this journey in body and soul while awake, that he made this journey. But as for when this journey occurred, it has certain significance, yes. Al-Isra wa Mi'raj have certain significance. And of the significance of Isra wa Mi'raj, that the Prophet Islam, that salat was made compulsory that night. Nam, and he met different Anbiya and different levels of the above. But of the main of those things that he came back with is regarding that salat be made compulsory upon us 5 times a day. Nam, and mentioned it in the hadith regarding that with Musa alayhi salam advising him regarding his ummah was unable to fulfill those obligations. So overall regarding the matter regarding concerning Isra wa Mi'raj is thabit. The Prophet made that journey. As for when this journey occurred, then we mentioned the ulama of Sirah wal Hadith and the ulama have a discussion regarding when this journey occurred. At what point? Yes, it occurred during the time of Mecca. Of the ulama, of some put forward that occurred before Mecca or before the Prophet before prophethood, but that has no bearing. That view has no bearing. So they mentioned that it occurred before it occurred. Before that it occurred while he was in Mecca, before he made Al-Hijrah. So before Al-Hijrah from Mecca to Medina, what point in Mecca it occurred? Some mention that how many times, how long he spent in Mecca in giving da'wah. How many years? 13, huh? So it said it occurs concerning the last half of that while he was there. So they kind of divide split into half. It occurred not in the first half, but in the last half of his stay in Mecca or life in Mecca as a prophet. But after saying exactly when, there's a khilaf. Did this night journey occurred? Some mention a year before, some mention 2 years. You have different time that is given. So the year dispute. Second, regarding the month it occurred. Which month it occurred? Isra wal Mi'raj. Which month it occurred? According to those who mention later Isra wal Mi'raj as a celebration for them, they see it as the 27th night of Rajab. But you have those who mention Shaban of the ulama, those who put forth Rajab, those who put forth Ramadan. So you have different aqwal. So Ibn Hajar mentions that now regarding this discussion as to when it occurred, you have aqwal. You have various aqwal that over 10 views and more regarding when this journey occurred, even though they agree it occurred. But to put a specific date, year, time, then there's a khilaf between the ulama. Now, as things in those early days was not per se recorded with preciseness. Now, so you find things in the years of Mecca that regarding concerning dates that were not regarding Isra not that precise. It just was confirmed that it was done while he was in Mecca, close to the time of his hijrah. But exactly when, then that's a open discussion. That's an open discussion. So for any or so, but they hold that this day to be of that day. And based upon this, there's certain celebration that is carried out on that day. Gifts, sweets, and things like that are done. Also regarding Isra Mi'raj, there's no, so as mentioned, no dua, specific dua, supplication, tasbih, azkar to be mentioned. So during the time of Rajab, month of Rajab, there's no specific dua to be done, no specific salat to be done, no specific siyam to be done, no dhabiha, slaughtering to be done, no charity. Nor so a person give charity as he would normally give charity. So there's nothing that specific to be done in the month of Rajab compared to other months. The reason being that yes, there's a hadith on this matter, but all of them, except for a few regarding as mentioned concerning that with Rajab, is of those months. We mentioned that of those months which is sacred, but going into detail as to do this additional act, then there's no such thing, as mentioned by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. So that's concerned that of those things. So I mentioned even concerned that al-umrah that was mentioned before in Jahiliyyah, umrah. So also that concern that umrah, that the person, the umrah is umrah whatever you're able. Umrah is there's nothing that mentioned about umrah in Rajab as having some type of virtue. So regarding virtues, regarding time, or a particular place, then these require dalil. that are clear. So that inshallah ta'ala, as mentioned, that of the ulama, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, have mentioned regarding concerning, discussing concerning each month. So he went through all the 12 months of the year and mentioned the ahadith and what is said regarding things that are said to, that are attributed to the month. And he mentioned those things which is valid and those things that are not. So with that inshallah ta'ala will end. وَبِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى تَوْفِيقٌ وَهَذَا السَّبِيلُ.